So very much like I was saying earlier, it's our passions that got us into this mess, that bring us into a state where we're diffident, we compete, and we aim for glory. It's a state of nature, it's horrible for everyone. Our passions got us out, right? Fear of death, want of things necessary for commodious living, and the hope by our industry to attain them. So, right, in much the same way, it's that we're so rational that makes it hard for us to associate with one another. Right? Reason tells me you're a threat. Reason tells you I'm a threat. Right? Reason tells us not to trust one another. Right? But again, for Hobbes, it's going to be reason that gets us out of this mess. Right? The generation of the Commonwealth. We've seen that provisional or temporary agreements don't work and regress back into a state of war. Hobbes claims the only way to be sure that this doesn't happen is to appoint one person or an assembly of people to bear the person, remember the definition, of all. It would be necessary for everyone to make an agreement like the one found on page 227 of your text. And I'm just going to read this. I want you to think about it while I'm reading it. I authorize and give up my right of governing myself to this man, or to this assembly of men, on this condition, that you give up your right to him and authorize all of his actions in like manner. Let that sink in for a second. I'll read it one more time. I authorize and give up my right of governing myself to this man, or this assembly of men, on this condition, that you give up thy right to him and authorize all of his actions in like manner. I find it works better if we add a name. I authorize and give up my right of governing myself to Joe, on this condition, that you give up your right to Joe and authorize all of his actions in like manner. What would this mean? Well, in a state of nature, if I saw something I wanted and you had it, I would push you down and take it. What do? You get up, brush yourself off, and try to take it back from me, if I don't take care of the problem before it becomes a problem. Right? We rely only on our individual power. But if we all come together and authorize this fictitious person named Joe, right? What Joe says goes. I see you've got something I want, I take it. What do? You yell, hey Joe, he took my thing. Right? Joe comes over. Right? Joe turns to everyone else and says, get him. Joe's got so much power that there's not one among us that could hope to resist Joe. Small groups weren't enough. Large groups without a leader, same condition as a state of war, it's a mob. Right? Conditional submission to authority, not enough. But if Joe has all the power, right? If Joe bears the person of all of us, there's not one among us that can stand against Joe. That's enough for Joe to scare the hell out of me. Right? And if I enter into this covenant, right, mutual covenant between all of us, right, what we do is lay out the basic conditions for peace. Right? In this manner, a multitude of people are united in one person, and this agreement is called the Commonwealth Agreement. Right? What is brought into effect is a commonwealth, or what Hobbes calls a Leviathan. Why does he call it a Leviathan? Big scary sea monster, scariest thing that Hobbes could think of. Right? Basically, right, we need one creature with so much power that this one creature scares the hell out of us. What are we going to do if there's this one creature with all the power? Obey. Whatever this creature says goes. Right? Whatever this, and Hobbes calls this creature a mortal God, says is law is law. Right? This is so because this one individual or assembly has so much, actually all of the power conferred upon them, that one will, right, is given the power and authority to represent the will of everyone. So Hobbes defines a commonwealth as one person, of whose acts a great multitude, by mutual covenants, one with another, have made themselves every one the author, to the end that he may use the strength and means of all of them as he shall think best for their peace and common defense. But think about this Commonwealth agreement. I authorize Joe to give up my right to govern myself on this condition that you do the same. Right? Now Joe gets to do whatever the heck Joe wants. Joe is actually the only natural person left. All of us are bound up artificially with the natural person, Joe. Right? We've alienated our power, we've alienated our will to Joe. What Joe says goes. Joe says, this is law, it's now law. And if we don't like it being law, we can fight against everyone. But Hobbes points out at least we are not fighting against one another. Right? If I know Joe's in power, I suck up to Joe. Right? If Joe's in power, I listen to what Joe says, and I stay on Joe's good side. If Joe's in power, and he says that there can be such things as private property, if I have things, you can't take them, or you have to face the wrath of Joe. Right? Look out, it's Joe. So, right, ultimately, right, what we're looking at is a type of power called sovereign power. Right? The one person, Joe, is sovereign. Everyone else is subject to this power. So we're subjects of a sovereign. Now, how do we get a sovereign? It really doesn't matter according to Hobbes. Right? The important point is getting there. But he does give us at least two examples, right, of ways that we could get a sovereign. The first is by natural force. Think Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Caesar, right, that sort of thing. Right? These people just show themselves to be natural leaders of the pack, and everybody just kind of follows them. Right? Joe knows what he's doing. I'd follow Joe. Right? Or by war. Someone seizes power by subduing all of their enemies. This is more the Genghis Khan kind of method, right, of obtaining power. But in either case, what you've got is a power structure called sovereign power, under which we all live as subjects. Right? And this power structure, right, what Hobbes has created is sort of an office, right, that someone can sit in. Right? Why is this a good thing? Well, think back to the too bad we're not bugs argument. Right? One of the big problems with human beings is that we distinguish between public and private good. Right? If there's something that's going to be good for society but bad for me, too bad. It doesn't happen for society because it's bad for me. I'm not getting behind that. But with one person with all the power, what's good for that one person, if they're really power hungry and desirous, is to become more powerful. So what's good for society is what's good for that individual, and what's good for that individual is, fingers crossed, good for society. So Hobbes has broken down that public-private dimension.